Good day, everyone, or good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Thanks for joining us. You're listening and watching the Yale Alumni Association's uh, one of our shared interest groups, the Yale Latino Alumni Network's webinar, Criminal Justice in Crisis. This is a conversation with Yale Law School alumni. And I'm Stephanie Double, Director for Shared Interest Groups. I'm with the Yale Alumni Association, working in partnership with the Yale Latino Alumni Network. And we have some co-sponsoring groups today, First Gen Yale and the Association of Asian American Yale Alumni. So thank you all for being here. I just want to take a moment actually to um, tell you a little bit about this group, the Latino Alumni Network. This is a fantastic shared interest group. We're going to talk later on about how you can get involved with this group. And I'm very delighted to share with you the moderator. So let me introduce Mari Hinojosa. Class of 94, she is a board member for Lawyers for Children, a nonprofit providing legal and social work advocacy for children in foster care in New York City. And she also chairs the Social Action Committee at Central Synagogue, focusing on criminal justice reform. She's worked on campaigns to pass New York state legislation such as Raise the Age, bail reform, and Turn on the Tap. Mari is a native of San Antonio, Texas, and she also holds a JD from Harvard Law School. After law school, she received a Skadden Fellowship to work at Lawyers for Children, where she remained for 17 years, first as an attorney and ultimately as the Director of Development. So she currently serves as an Alumni Association delegate from the class of 1984. She's also a member of the YAA Board of Governors Nominating Committee. And of course, she's on the Yale Latino Alumni Network's New York City leadership team. So I'm so excited to welcome to the stage our very own Mari. And here she is.
Hello, thank you so much, Stephanie. And many thanks to YAA for making this possible. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be in conversation with this stellar group of panelists. We have a lot to learn from them, and I'm eager to jump into our discussion. I first want to thank Yale Latino Alumni Network and Elvira Duran in particular for organizing this webinar, and as you mentioned, First Gen Yale and the Association of Asian American Yale Alumni for co-sponsoring the event. And now I want to briefly introduce our incredible panelists who are all, as you said, graduates of Yale Law School. Jorge Camacho, class of 2010, is the senior counsel at New York City Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, but he will soon be moving into academia as the Policing, Law, and Policy Director at the Justice Collaboratory at Yale Law School. Also from New York City is Alicia Sanchez Ramirez, 2015 YLS grad, who is presently a staff attorney at the Criminal Defense Practice of the Bronx Defenders, one of our nation's preeminent defender groups, where she has represented hundreds of clients at each stage of trial. Ryan Sakota, 2012, is a lecturer and teaching fellow at the University of Chicago Law School. And his research focuses on probation and post-release supervision. And last but not least, we have Sergio Perez. He's also class of 2010, and he's coming to us from the West Coast, where he is the executive director of the Orange County's Office of Independent Review, where he oversees justice-related county agencies. So I want to thank all the panelists from, taking time out of their very busy work schedules and lives to be with us here and have this discussion. And I want to begin by asking each of you to briefly talk about your path to your current position, the trajectory, and any advice that you might have for others. And I want to share that my own work on criminal justice reform was actually somewhat unexpected and came after my legal career. A few years ago, as I took time off, as Stephanie mentioned, from nearly 20 years of doing advocacy for children at Lawyers for Children, I have young kids, and I made the decision to be home for some time. And I began doing volunteer work with Central Synagogue, which is led by my incredible Yale 94 classmate, Rabbi Angela Bookdahl, where we've been engaging in community organizing and reform efforts in New York State. And if I have any advice to impart someone who might be struggling with that work-life balance at this stage of career and life, it's that, a pause can surprisingly sometimes turn to a pivot, and that there will always be a need and an outlet for your legal skills. So I want to begin with our newest graduate, Alicia. And I want to ask you if you could please give us a sense of what you're working on right now. And when you're looking at your career today, how direct was your trajectory? What, if any advice would you have to impart to someone looking to move into a similar position?
Yes, thank you, Maddie. I'm a staff attorney at the Bronx Defenders, so I represent people in criminal court, and I have been doing so for the past 5 years. And I'm actually transitioning into our immigration practice as of next week. I'll be doing direct deportation defense for a year and then returning to criminal practice after. I would say that my path was actually pretty direct. I started law school with the idea that I would want to be involved in some sort of public interest law, and I always knew I wanted to have like direct representation as a component of it. So public defense was a pretty easy find and fit for me. It was after hearing Steve Bright's spring speech to students that I really decided that this was something I was interested in pursuing. So I did a Bronx Defenders internship as my second summer, and that was just, I was hired from it. So my advice for people who are interested in direct representation or public defense would be to get as much practical experience as you can while in law school, either through clinics, internships, externships, really get the sense of what the day-to-day is like, and see whether it's a good fit for you. And then reach out to to our network at different offices you may be interested in to talk about what the hiring process is like and what you should be doing. And I would say also expanding our understanding of what public defense is. There's a lot of need in other areas, such as, direct representation in civil courts, such as housing court, family court for parent representation when families are being torn apart, immigration court when people are being forced to leave the country. So there's plenty of opportunities to do this kind of work in different legal contexts. So just thinking about other options.
And just in 1 minute, tell us what you're working on right now, what your day is like.
What my day is like. I have a lot of, I'm handling a caseload of, right now it's reduced because I'm transferring my cases. So it's around 30 cases. It's usually more like 60 or 70. New York court is either closed or virtual for criminal and Supreme Court. So I'm seeing a lot of judges virtually and prosecutors to discuss, and clients to do our appearances. So I have a lot of cases where we're doing litigation, anything except trial work, because we don't have juries right now. So just a lot of virtual appearances. We're starting in-person appearances little by little. And it's just working on anything from like discovery review on charges against clients to like trial preparation defense. So coming up with a theory, coming up with a potential defense, researching the law around that. And a lot also of like client interaction. I'm on the phone with clients every day, discussing their cases and what their outcomes could be.
Great, thank you. Our next most recent grad, Ryan, if you could give us a sense of what you're working on, how you got there, any advice?
Yeah, so I'm currently in Chicago, and I'm a Bigelow Fellow and lecturer in law at the University of Chicago Law School. And the Bigelow Fellowship is a 2-year fellowship. And in the 2 years, you get the opportunity to teach 1Ls. You do the legal research and writing class. So that's a great preparation and a great opportunity to prepare for the law school teaching market. And so that's who the fellowship is really geared towards, people on their way and planning to go and try to apply for professorships at law school. So I'm between my first and second year now. And now it's the summer. So school is not in session, but we're gearing up to start the school year in a little over a month. So there's some preparation for that, and also preparation for the academic market, which kind of starts around this end of the summertime, and you polish up your paper for the market, which is like a piece of scholarship that's supposed to show your ability to write and research and publish, hopefully, and then also you would, if you get a callback, what's called a callback, where a law school would want to bring you in for a series of interviews, you also would present that piece of scholarship. So this is the time of year where there's a lot of preparation for those things. In terms of my path to this point, it was a fairly long path, not the most common path to academia, but it's been very fulfilling, and I think every experience I've had has been useful. At the same time that I was completing the JD at Yale, I also was working on a PhD in economics at Harvard. So I kind of went back and forth. So I have a PhD in economics, which goes into my research as I do a lot of empirical research. So I got my training through that PhD. But through my experience in law school, I did some clinical work, and it was I really enjoyed working with clients. The work was really important. I did a prisoner rights clinic, and I just saw how bad the situation was, essentially, with the criminal justice system, just learning a lot more about the system and the problems with the system and working with clients, and I really enjoyed that. So I applied for another type of fellowship, which is a public interest fellowship, which is common to law schools. Did a year at the Public Defender's Office in Boston on that fellowship, where I was working on collateral housing consequences. So these are the housing, the impact on housing for individuals who are charged or arrested. Oftentimes, especially if you're in public housing or have some kind of housing assistance from the government, there's conditions where it's a lot of times it's terminated. That assistance is terminated if you have any kind of criminal record, even if it's not a conviction. So I was helping inform the lawyers there about those things, as well as taking on some cases. And then I transitioned into being a public defender, a criminal trial attorney. And in the next year, I did half housing and half the criminal work. And then for 2 more years after that, I was doing full criminal caseload. And then I transitioned from that to this Bigelow Fellowship, and I'm hoping to take all that experience and help inform my research and my writing, and hopefully do some helpful and relevant research with those experiences.
Great, thank you so much. And now we have the next 2 grads. We'll go with you next, Jorge.
Hi, everyone. Actually, you're catching me on my last day in my current position. So I'm currently a senior counsel at the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice in New York City, where we focus on kind of broad policy, criminal justice related policy, as well as implementation of various kind of local criminal justice related programs. We provide local funding to defender organizations, to alternatives to incarceration and detention. And we help support kind of citywide initiatives relating to criminal justice in a whole host of ways. Prior to that, I was at the New York City Law Department in the Legal Counsel Division, where I served as a legal advisor to the mayor's office, as well as to other city agencies on a whole host of policy and legal related issues. And prior to that, I was an assistant district attorney at the Manhattan DA's office here in New York. As of tomorrow, I'll be the Policing Law and Policy Director of the Justice Collaborative at Yale Law School, where I'll be doing police reform work, again, from a policy-related perspective, as well as teaching a related law school clinic. Right now, I think we have about 4 students enrolled. There's space for a maximum of 6. But I'll continue doing criminal justice-related work in my new role, and hoping to have some impact with that, and to kind of take advantage of a lot of the momentum that's been generated and galvanized in the last few months toward policing reform. In terms of kind of how I embarked on this path towards my current and future role, like many people who are interested in criminal justice work, I was interested in kind of practicing it as opposed to kind of jumping into the policy end of things from immediately from law school. For many people, they know from the outset, whether they want to join the prosecution side or join the advocacy and defense side. And for me, it was a little less clear and a little less certain. Throughout my life, I've kind of had various influences that have pulled me in one direction or another. My father was a police officer, so that clearly exposed me to kind of the law enforcement side of things. I also have a cousin who was a prosecutor. But then, I also have lots of family members who have justice system involvement. So, that kind of exposed me to certainly the possibility of pursuing advocacy on their behalf and on behalf of people who have similar involvement. At the end of the day, I think, I knew that no matter which kind of position I pursued from the outset, it wasn't something that I anticipated doing fully for my career. That really I wanted to kind of get exposure to the practice of criminal law at the local level, because that's where I think it's kind of, has the greatest impact. And I kind of wanted to see what the most unique perspective in that system I think could be. And when you're speaking broadly about the criminal justice system, I think it can be broken down into kind of two views. One, you could either work on it from the lens of defending people who are being subject to the power of the criminal justice system, or you could work on the opposite end where you're kind of wielding that power, to put it bluntly. You are wielding the power of the state and using kind of that coercive power against someone. I frankly, there was no way for me to understand what it would be like to wield that power without actually kind of joining a prosecutor's office, and really understanding from that perspective, why prosecutors make the decisions they do, why they kind of practice the way they do. And certainly it's not unusual for prosecutors to then leave and become defense attorneys. So I think that always in the back of my mind remained a possibility, whereas it's much, much, much rarer for a defense attorney to later then join a DA's office, and to kind of leave that advocacy role. So I joined the DA's office with that kind of perspective and that hope in mind, to really understand, this isn't just a job, but this is part, I would be a cog in a much bigger system, and kind of trying to understand that system from that perspective and from other perspectives. When I left the DA's office, it was with the hope of kind of being able to apply that knowledge toward criminal justice policy more broadly. And thankfully, I've been able to do it, and I'll continue to be able to do it. But that was kind of the initial decision point for me when deciding kind of what to do immediately after law school, given my interest in criminal justice policy broadly.
Great. And we're so lucky to have those different perspectives reflected here in our panel. And thank you for joining us on your very last day of work in your current job.
Of course.
And now, Sergio.
Thank you so much. So I am currently serving as the Executive Director of the Office of Independent Review in Orange County, California. The Office of Independent Review has oversight authority over justice-related county agencies, including the Sheriff's Department, the District Attorney's Office, the Public Defender's Office, the Probation Department, and the Social Services Agency, which is the Orange County agency that addresses economic, financial need, and provides other kinds of benefits to the people of Orange County. It's a large jurisdiction, and the functions of the office can be cleanly summarized into three general categories. One is the investigation of individual incidents, like an alleged excessive use of force or an in-custody death. The other is systemic reviews and investigations, delving into the causes of certain patterns or practices that may be unlawful or that may not be in keeping with best practices. For example, you might have a series of incidents involving patrol officers, and you might want to take a look at the underlying causes as opposed to viewing each incident in a discrete fashion. And finally, the Office of Independent Review has the authority to monitor sensitive processes within each of the offices that it works with. For example, following an officer-involved shooting out on the street, there is a review process that is triggered within the Sheriff's Department, and the Office of Independent Review and its staff has the authority to observe those proceedings to ensure that things are going as they should. It's an office, like many in the oversight space, that has a bit of a tortured history. Oversight in law enforcement is a fairly new, fairly untested institution, both at the local, state, and federal levels. And I got here through going through each of those testing grounds. I began my career as a trial attorney in the U.S. Department of Justice within the Civil Rights Division. And I was within that in the Special Litigation Section, which has authority to investigate allegations of unconstitutional patterns or practices by law enforcement agencies